Imagine the endless opportunity if you could feel at home wherever you go. Despite the fact that, sure, start over. Imagine the endless opportunity if you could feel at home wherever you go. More people are moving and traveling than ever before. And imagine being able to do that. Wouldn't that be some feat? I'm Lynn Greenberg, founder and CEO of Pivot, and I'm passionate about helping people thrive and live and feel at home wherever you go. The largest indicator and factor for people relocating is corporate-led mobility. The problem? Despite the fact that companies spend millions of dollars annually relocating people, a third of them quit their job within a year or move back home because of social reasons. This is because they can't socially acclimate. They have a really big problem, fitting in, feeling a sense of belonging within their community. But this isn't just a corporate mobility problem. Last year alone, 23 million Americans relocated due to the fact that they could work more flexibly. People were starting to understand that they could take this opportunity to live somewhere new, to live somewhere more affordable, or spend your winter summer and their summer somewhere else. In addition to that, over 12 countries were paying people to relocate there. Even more cities within the US alone were incentivizing people to do this. And the rise of digital nomads have hit an all-time high. Last year alone, there were 35 million digital nomads in the world. So why should we care? Well, the future of work impacts human mobility, and human mobility directly impacts cities. So we'll take a few of these sectors, break it down to really understand the implications. The first one is hospitality. And the motivation and timeframes that people are staying in hotels and utilizing the hospitality industry is drastically changing. This is all due to the fact that, as I said earlier, people are more transient. They're not spending the time in the same place for more than a few months at most. And people are using hotels to work there. Some companies, some hotels are incentivizing people to pay hourly so that they could take a nap in between work meetings, or use it as a co-working space in between flights. So everything and the mindset and the business model is drastically changing. And then you think about transportation, and you think about, well, who's commuting? If people are working flexibly and remotely, how does that change public transport, right? And then you think about housing, and what does that look like? If people are, spending their time in multiple places, what does that mean for the rental market? What does that mean for, new subscription models that are coming out where people can, subscribe to a housing community and spend 2 months in New York, 2 months in London, and 2 months in Berlin, all for a subscription price? And then local businesses, of course, are impacted, right? Because you think about all the companies that were catered towards people going into the office, which is no longer the case. So when we think about what the implication is with the human-scaled mobility, what can we do to really have an impact here? And what we think at our company, Pivot, is there's a huge untapped opportunity with social media. The problem is we need to totally rethink the way social media is currently. The business model for many of our traditional social media platforms is based around ad spend. And so they are incentivized to get as many people on the platform for as long as possible. What this leads to is, multiple people spending a lot of time on the platform while the main goal of these social platforms is connectivity. What it ultimately leads to is loneliness. In fact, 71% of heavy social media users have reported severe loneliness. So where we think the real impact is the opportunity to reimagine social media. Can we use social media to connect you with the people and resources that you need right away and at the right time throughout your relocation journey so that you can start making the most of wherever you are in the real world? Can we use social media as a digital way station to start making the most from day one, not 6 months after you arrive, not a year after you arrive, as it traditionally is, but from day one. So with that, I'll leave you back with the starting argument that I spoke about, which was imagine the endless opportunity if you could feel at home anywhere you go. We aren't that far off, but we need to start reimagining technology's implication on human scale mobility.
Lynn, thank you very much for this first insights. Please feel free to take a seat because we have much more time to deep dive into that topic, as it is such an amazing approach for social media, for using social media in a positive way. Tell us a bit more about Pivot. How did you came up with the idea? Why are you so passionate about that topic?
Pivot was actually started out of my own experience. I relocated to London to work for Bloomberg, and I landed there without knowing anyone and faced the issue that we all do when moving to a new and unfamiliar place, which is, how do I go about making my new city feel like home? And I desperately needed people, connections. How do I recreate my network from scratch? And I needed resources from people I trusted. And after speaking to thousands of expats, relocated employees, I realized it was a much bigger problem than just myself. We actually started as a consumer app originally for people moving and traveling to help acclimate in their new city. And we were approached by HSBC, and they said, we like what you're doing, but this is something that we're really struggling with our workforce. Is this something that you can build for businesses? And when we went back to the drawing board, we found that there was a really big hole in the market and a really big opportunity to make an impact. So that's what landed us to where we are today.
Where can I use it right now? Where around the globe?
So we are currently supporting all of North America. We hope to be in parts of Europe this fall, and are growing pretty rapidly. So the goal is to be everywhere sometime soon.
So tell us a bit more about how does it work? Is it a web page? Is it an app? How do I use it? What do I have to do?
So it's a mobile app. We also do quite a bit, as I was referring to earlier, to kind of give you proactively the people and resources that you need, spanning from what expectations do you want to have, starting to have you think about how do I want to live where I go, and can I share that with my partner or spouse so we're on the same page, to expert content, resources. We have 225 city guides around the world. And then we proactively connect you to those people that either speak your language, are from your company, went to your university, have the same interests, really so that you can start connecting with the real world. And one of the things that we started implementing is we'll nudge you and we'll say, that deli that you go to, every day, we're in month 3. Why don't you go introduce yourself, because that's going to have a really big implication on feeling like you belong. So we really try to do a lot to really nudge you to start making the most of your experience off the app, and more importantly, making the most of the real world.
Cool. So I mean, we all know that there are already many social media tools existing. Why are they not enough?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the traditional social media platforms are driven by the wrong purposes. Mm-hmm. They're driven by ad spend, right? We're a subscription model since we're paid for by mostly companies and other solutions. And so when it's driven by ad spend, you want people to be on the platform for as long as possible. And of course that obstructs you from actually making the most of the real world, which is the complete opposite of what you need when you're trying to feel connected and acclimated. Yeah. So I think that's really the main reason that they go wrong. And also, we've mapped out really religiously the journey. And based on where we know you are, we'll check in with you. We'll see how you're doing. And based on how you tell us, we'll connect you to people, we'll connect you to resources to help you get on your feet. I think that in their social media platforms like Meta, there's obviously the WhatsApps of the world, but there's no one that's really kind of focused on this demographic, understanding their journey and what they really need at the right point.
I think the most important part is just that it's a social media tool that doesn't want to keep you away from society, but pushing you into it, actually.
Exactly, exactly.
But anyways, no matter what social media tool we are talking about, it's always a problem of trust.
Sure.
So we are losing trust at the moment when talking about social media. How do you build that trust?
It's a really great question, and I think that's, the star of any platform, especially ours, and a fine line that we're trying to kind of cross. And really how we do that is we're a closed network. So everyone on our platform is going through the same thing that you are. They understand what you're going through. You can be vulnerable with them because they've probably experienced it themselves. You don't have to worry about solicitors or people trying to sell you something. And we also don't let the employers on the platform. So, we've heard a lot of the times actually the spouse say, well, I don't want to speak up and say that I'm feeling nervous or anxious or I had a bad day because I don't want it to reflect poorly on my spouse and his employer or her employer. And so we're trying to really kind of create that community where it's really close-knit. People understand that you're not alone, and we're here to really help you.
So where do you see any gaps that technical things can probably close?
In the global mobility industry and human mobility, I think the biggest gap that and this is something that I experienced myself when I was in London. I knew that I had a large network in London, whether it have been through friends of friends, people from my university, my workplace, but there was no
And that's
way.
even more than the most people have.
Absolutely. But you think about all the people that relocate from New York to London and vice versa, and there was no way to tap into it and identify those people in a meaningful way. And then the second thing is, can you understand your expectations? Because we can learn from everyone else that have gone before us, right? And so what we're trying to do is say, hey, there are going to be tough days, but here are the tools that you need to not just cope, but to thrive. I needed that, certainly, because a lot of people think, okay, New York to London, London to New York, it's pretty similar, they speak the same language, but actually there are a lot of nuances, and that can really deter you and make you depressed, and, as a third of people do, return early due to not being able to feel like they belong.
Why do you think that these mobility people you're talking about have to care more about it than others do?
About the
whole social thing and well, I feel
Yeah.
they have to take care more than it comes natural to the others.
Yeah.
But if you are like moving around all the time, you have to put in focus on that, on your actually at the end of the day on your mental health.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to I think that it's a very lonely journey. And it's a tough journey. Moving is one of the, research has shown that loneliness is tied to moving because it's one of the most stressful life events. And, especially if your friends and family back home can't relate to what you're going through, who do you speak to about this? What type of resources do you have? Do you know that you shouldn't be thriving from day one? No, well, actually, it usually takes people 6 months to a year. But you don't know that. You're expecting to land and really hit the ground running. And so, I think that wellness component and knowing that they're not alone and here's some resources that you can turn to is especially important for this demographic, the mobility demographic. But even increasingly more so now, the mobile the people that are mobile, maybe that they're spending a few months in several places or they're traveling. I think it's, increasingly becoming something that they're feeling as well.
Perfect. I think that is not only such an interesting, but also such an important topic to talk about when we talk about smart cities. We are talking about traffic jams and stuff, all the technical things, charging, but talking about the humans itself needs to be much more important. That's what
Absolutely.
makes a smart city smart at the end of the day.
For sure.
So thank you very much for that great idea, and thank you very much for introducing it to us on the stage. Are there any questions from you guys about Pivot, about human scale mobility? Yeah, we have one question. Perfect. Do we have a microphone? We will bring one to you. I know we can hear you pretty good, but I think the others will maybe have some problems. So it's better now.
So you said that is an app, right?
It is.
Yeah. Is it available? And when not, when it's available?
It is available.
It's called
available.
under Pivot.
It is PIVT, and it's available
You said North America
in
by
North
now.
America for right now, but we're quickly growing.
Is it on all languages? How much languages you have?
Right now, just English, but we're currently working to have it in multiple languaes.
Okay, thank you.
For how long are you in the market now? When was
We've
the market
been
introduction?
a business platform for about a year.
Okay, but then there's much more time. And
As a
much more things
consumer
to
app,
come.
exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Lynn, thank you very, very much for that point. I think no questions from our audience. Such an interesting approach. I really love the idea behind it. Thanks
you.
for sharing it
Appreciate
with
it.
us.
Thanks
Thanks
so
a lot,
much.
Lynn Greenberg. Oh, they have another question. Do we have? Jay has a question. Jay always has questions.
Hey, hello. One question concerning the pandemic. I mean, expats and so on, traveling around, we've been locked away for 2.5, nearly 3 years. I've read one statement from you. You wish it would not be called social distancing, but just physical distancing. How can PIVT help with this social interaction, so just to be splitted physically away? How could it help? Because this is as well a completely different side of loneliness.
You're absolutely right, and you're a good student because I'm surprised you remember that. But yeah, it's absolutely right, and it was so detrimental. I think what we traditionally saw that this was a problem for corporate-led relocated employees, but we all felt it during the pandemic. We all felt that social isolation because we were disconnected from everyone around us. And so, loneliness became a really big factor. And as we looked at the people that we were supporting, and then we did actually a survey among expats, and less than 40% of expats that we surveyed had a built-in support network before the pandemic occurred. So they had no one that they could go to, of course, to ask about healthcare and what do I do, and how do I resonate with people around me, and we're seeing this transpire 2 years later because we have that flexible and remote workforce where people aren't going back into the office 5 days a week, and specifically people that are relocating may be relocating to a region and then aren't meeting their colleagues. And so how do you really kind of dive into that? And we're doing an initiative with a couple of companies called the Employee Embeddedness Initiative, where we're really working to get you integrated in that soft landing within your company. And I think that there's several opportunities within the remote and flexible workforce. We started working, as I mentioned, as corporate-led, but now we're really supporting the entire flexible workforce for those reasons, because there's ways that we can connect you in meaningful ways to combat loneliness, to curb your expectations, to integrate you into your company and your community. So it's a great question.
Okay, perfect. Now I'm saying goodbye for the second time. I feel like my grandma. She always told me like, goodbye, goodbye, but she'd never hang up. Like she did it 5 or 6 times. Now it's finally
Thank you so
time to
much.
say goodbye.
Appreciate it.
Lynn, thanks for being with us today. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you. Appreciate it.